My name is Rachel Monroe, 32 years old. I remember the moment I realized I wasn't a part of the family. It wasn't a sudden thing, but more of a slow burn. I was 6 when I overheard Dad telling his business partner that, if only she'd been born with the right equipment, she could have taken over the company. Mom didn't say anything. She just sipped her wine. That was the moment I understood that I was their biggest disappointment. Growing up, it was always clear who they valued more. My brother, Andrew, got the bedroom with the view. I got the basement room that flooded every spring. He got the college funds and business lessons. I got etiquette classes and lectures about not embarrassing the family. I remember when Andrew crashed Dad's car at 17. They didn't even bat an eye. They just bought him a new one. But when I got straight A's and a scholarship offer to a prestigious college, Dad said, "What's the point? You'll just get married anyway." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask how he could say that to me, but I didn't. Instead, I just nodded, the bitterness welling up inside of me. At 18, I left. I went across the country to college. They didn't help with tuition, not a cent. They didn't even say goodbye. Mom told relatives I was rebellious. Dad told his golf buddies that he only had one child now. When Andrew called me a few years later to tell me that I'd been legally removed from the will, it felt like the final nail in the coffin. "Nothing personal," he said, "just business succession planning." I fought my way through life after that. I worked 3 jobs through college. I slept in my car between shifts. I graduated with honors in finance, got hired at a firm in Boston, and built a career. I made more money in 1 year than my parents' company ever saw. I bought a condo in cash and drove a car worth more than their entire annual revenue. But I never called them. They never called me. Then one day, about 5 years ago, Andrew showed up at my office. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were rumpled and his eyes were bloodshot. "The company's drowning," he said, voice shaky. "We need $350,000 to avoid bankruptcy." It was a hard pill to swallow. The same company that had written me off was now asking for my help. A company that had always treated me like a second-class citizen, and now they wanted me to save them. "We need you," Andrew said, his eyes pleading. "This is your legacy, too." "Does Dad know you're here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "He's the one who sent me," he said. "He thought you'd be more receptive to me." I looked at him for a moment, processing his words. I wasn't sure if I wanted to help, but there was something in the air that made me pause. A part of me, the part that wanted to prove I was worthy of love, wanted to help. The other part of me, the part that wanted revenge, wanted to let them fail. "Let me get this straight," I said, trying to maintain control. "You want $350,000, and you expect me to just hand it over?" Andrew nodded. "Please, Rachel. The bank denied our loans. We've lost major clients. We have nothing left." I looked at my computer screen. I pulled up my investment portfolio and turned it toward him. His eyes widened when he saw the numbers. "You want $350,000? I asked, my voice cold. "I make that in quarterly bonuses." His face went through a quick series of emotions: shock, envy, desperation. He swallowed hard. "So, you'll help?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back in my chair, taking my time. "Tell Dad I'll meet him," I said finally. "Noon tomorrow, at the restaurant where he told Uncle David I was worthless, the one he said I couldn't carry on the family name." The next day, I walked into that same restaurant. It felt like walking into a tomb. They were all there. Dad, Mom, Andrew. Their faces had aged poorly. Dad's suit was outdated, and Mom's jewelry looked cheap. But the air was thick with expectation, as though they thought I'd come in, ready to forgive. I ordered the most expensive wine on the menu. I let them sit in silence as I took my first sip, savoring the moment of power I had over them. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "Andrew explained our situation," he said, his voice rough. "Your situation?" I corrected. Mom reached across the table, her eyes pleading. "Please, Rachel, we're still your parents," she said, her voice shaky. I pulled my hand back. "You disowned me legally," I reminded her. "We were angry," Dad said, his eyes not meeting mine. "We made mistakes." "You made choices," I said, voice firm. "You chose to value a chromosome over a daughter." I pulled out my checkbook and began to write. The silence was thick, heavy with anticipation. When I finished, I slid the check across the table toward them. Dad picked it up and his face turned white. The amount was $0. On the memo line, I'd written, "For your only child." Mom started crying. Dad crumpled the check and threw it on the table. Andrew just stared at me. "You'd let the family business die?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Your family business?" I replied. "I'm not family, remember?" I stood up, leaving the $300 bills for the wine on the table, and walked toward the door. "Wait," I heard Dad call behind me. I stopped but didn't turn around. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice cracking. "The business failing isn't an accident." I turned slowly, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Dad glanced at Mom and then at Andrew before pulling out his phone and showing me a series of threatening emails. The sender knew everything about me. My struggles, my pain. The message was clear. Someone had been targeting their business for months, using my own pain as ammunition. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who's doing this?" I asked. Dad's hands shook as he scrolled through the messages, every one of them signed by the same name. "Your real daughter." My stomach dropped. That wasn't me. That wasn't possible. But Dad's face was grim. "We know," he whispered. "That's what scares us." The restaurant noise faded into static as I stared at the phone in Dad's trembling hands. Lines of text filled the screen. Cold, methodical, and personal. Whoever this was knew everything about me, about us, about the years of silence, the disownment, the way I'd clawed my way up from nothing. Every message ended the same way: "Your real daughter." My pulse thudded in my ears. "Show me everything," I said quietly. Dad handed me the phone, and I scrolled through the messages, each one more detailed than the last. They referenced private family moments only we could know. The flooded basement, the scholarship I'd lost when Dad refused to co-sign my housing loan, the long nights I'd spent working double shifts, the times I'd broken down in parking lots. Someone had been watching me for years, documenting my life. "When did this start?" I asked. "About 6 months ago," Andrew said. "Right after we landed the Meridian Industries contract. That's when everything started falling apart." I froze. Meridian Industries. The name hit me like a physical blow. "You worked with them?" Dad nodded. "We were negotiating a major deal. It was supposed to save the company. Then someone sent Meridian falsified documents claiming we'd committed fraud. They cut ties overnight. The bank followed soon after." Andrew added, "And then someone hacked our accounts. Made it look like we were laundering money. We got cleared, but the damage was done. No one will lend to us." Mom's voice broke the tension, soft but trembling. "They sent pictures." "Pictures?" I asked. She unlocked her phone with shaking fingers and showed me images. Grainy, intimate, horrifying. Me at 19, sleeping in my car. Me at a diner at 2 a.m., still in my apron. Me outside the financial aid office, tears streaming down my face. Each photo captioned with barbed sentences. "While you bought your son a BMW. While you vacationed in Europe. While you pretended she didn't exist." My breath caught. "How did they even get these?" "We don't know," Mom whispered. "But whoever it is, they've been following you for years." Dad scrolled to the newest email, dated only a week ago. The pictures were current. Me in my office, me leaving my condo, me at the gym, all taken without my knowledge. "They sent these 2 weeks ago," he said hoarsely, "with a message. She's doing fine without you. This is what happens when you throw away something valuable." My stomach twisted. This wasn't justice, it was obsession. "Did you call the police?" Andrew shook his head. "We tried. The emails are routed through servers in 6 countries. Untraceable. The photos have no metadata. Whoever this is, they're professionals." I studied the messages again. The tone was articulate, educated, the grammar flawless. The threats weren't impulsive, they were deliberate. Someone who understood business. Someone who wanted psychological warfare, not violence. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. Dad finally met my eyes. For the first time in my life, I saw something new there. Fear. "Because we thought it was you." The words landed like a slap. "You thought I'd do this?" "We didn't know what to think," Mom whispered. "We hurt you. We thought maybe this was payback." I almost laughed. After everything they'd done, the idea that I would waste my time orchestrating revenge was almost insulting. "When did you realize it wasn't me?" Dad exhaled shakily and opened one last message. 3 days ago, we got this." The subject line read, "Don't waste your time. She won't help you, but I will, for a price." The body of the email chilled me. Public confession. Acknowledge what you did to her. Legally, publicly, permanently. Tell the world how you disowned her, how you favored your son, how you erased her. Do it by Friday, or I start targeting your son next. The last line made my blood run cold. Andrew paled. They sent me something too. He handed me his phone. The email listed his home address, his wife's name, and, my chest tightened, his 3-year-old daughter's preschool. A photo of a toddler on a playground, time-stamped yesterday. Violet, my niece, a child I'd never met. The same family that threw me away now had a child in danger because of it. I looked up, my voice calm but deadly. Show me your client list, I said. Every company you've worked with in the last 10 years. We spent the next 2 hours combing through files. My analytical instincts kicked in, the same instincts they used to say were wasted on me. I made notes, cross-checked timelines, looked for patterns. Somewhere in the chaos, a name caught my eye. Stop, I said, go back. Dad scrolled up. What? Westfield Capital Management. You did their corporate restructuring 8 years ago? Yes, small contract, $40,000 at most. Why? Because I interned there, I said slowly, the summer after freshman year. The air in the room thickened. Mom frowned. Did you tell anyone there about us? I thought back. That summer had been a blur of exhaustion and hunger. I'd barely spoken to anyone. No, I told people my parents were overseas. Who did you work under? Dad asked. I pulled up my phone and searched LinkedIn, scrolling through names until one froze me in place. A face I hadn't thought about in years. Pamela Torres, I said softly. She was a senior analyst. She mentored me. Andrew frowned. I don't remember her. You wouldn't, I said. She never came to the office much. We met in coffee shops or on video calls. Her face stared back at me from the screen. Sharply intelligent eyes, confident smile. She'd been kind to me back then. Too kind. Bought me lunch when she saw I wasn't eating. Gave me her old suits when she said she was cleaning her closet. I'd been too proud to accept charity, but she'd insisted. She was different, I murmured. Empathetic, like she saw right through me. Dad leaned forward. Does that name mean anything to you? He shook his head. Should it? I clicked on Pamela's profile. It hadn't been updated in years. The last entry, independent consultant. No company, no location. I searched her name again, this time adding Westfield Capital scandal. An old article appeared. Senior analyst files whistleblower complaint against company, wins $2.3 million settlement. The words blurred as I read. Pamela had exposed her company for financial fraud. Afterward, she vanished from the industry. She knows how to destroy companies, I said quietly. But why would she care about us? Mom asked. I didn't answer. My mind was spinning too fast. Maybe she'd recognized my name when my family's company came up during due diligence. Maybe she'd connected the dots. The disowned daughter she'd once mentored, now the victim of her family's cruelty. And maybe, in her own twisted way, she thought she was helping. I need to find her, I said finally. How? Andrew asked. She's a ghost. No social media, no address, no paper trail. I stared at the glowing phone screen and whispered, if she's been watching me, she's close. Boston. The photos, the timing, it all pointed here. I stood, suddenly certain. She's here, and I'm going to find her. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of my apartment, every flicker of light from the street felt like a watchful eye. The idea that someone had been following me, photographing me, archiving my pain, it crawled beneath my skin like ice. If Pamela Torres really was behind this, then she wasn't just targeting my family, she was targeting me. By morning, my fear had hardened into determination. I started with what I knew. Westfield Capital, the lawsuit, the settlement. If she'd vanished after that, the money trail would be the key. I called a contact from my firm, Trevor, a forensic accountant who owed me a few favors. I need a name traced, I said. Legal or gray? He asked, half joking. Gray, he chuckled. My favorite kind. Pamela Torres, I continued. Whistleblower settlement, Westfield Capital, about 7 years ago. I need to know where that money went. He paused. That's a tall order, Rach, but if she's been using that cash, it'll leave a cent. Give me a day. I hung up and stared at the skyline outside my window. Boston shimmered in the pale light of dawn. Glass, steel, ambition. A city that remembered everything and forgave nothing. By nightfall, Trevor called back. Found something. Tell me. The settlement money was transferred into a private trust registered under the name Phoenix Strategies, LLC. That company's been operating for 6 years, does corporate risk assessment and forensic consulting. I frowned. Risk assessment? Basically, they investigate companies. due diligence for investors, background checks, fraud detection. She's good too. Pulled in another few million over the years. Phoenix Strategies. The name wasn't subtle. Rising from the ashes. Send me everything, I said. Already did. Be careful, Rachel. Whoever she is, she's not playing small. I spent hours combing through the files Trevor sent. Pamela had turned her settlement into an empire of exposure. She found corruption, toppled executives, dismantled corporations that exploited workers or hid abuse. She'd built a reputation as a shadow, a corporate vigilante. But 8 months ago, something changed. Phoenix Strategies had been hired by an investment firm called Blackwell and Associates. The assignment? Due diligence on a potential acquisition target. My family's company. The pieces clicked. During her investigation, she must have seen my name in the company records, realized who I was. The girl she'd once mentored, the one her employers had betrayed, was the daughter of the people she now viewed as abusers, and she'd decided to deliver her version of justice. My phone buzzed. Trevor again. There's more, he said. Phoenix Strategies headquarters are listed in Boston. Small office downtown. I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. Then she's close. The next evening, I went to the address Trevor gave me. The office building was sleek, anonymous, frosted glass, and quiet security. The kind of place you could disappear into. The directory listed Phoenix Strategies, Suite 1104. I rode the elevator up, my heart pounding in time with its hum. When the doors opened, I found a single hallway lined with closed doors. Suite 1104 had no logo, just a black plaque with white lettering. I raised my hand to knock, then stopped. What was I doing? Walking into the lion's den without a plan? Before I could decide, the door opened. A woman stepped out. Late 40s, thin, hair pulled back neatly. The same sharp eyes from the old photo. Pamela Torres. She froze when she saw me. A flicker of surprise, then recognition. Rachel, she said softly, like she'd been expecting me all along. Hello, Pamela. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She glanced past me down the hall, then stepped aside. You'd better come in. Her office was minimalist. No family photos, no clutter, just clean lines and a faint scent of coffee. On one wall hung a single-framed quote. Justice is not revenge, it's balance restored. How long have you been watching me? I asked. She met my gaze without flinching. Since the day I found out who your parents were. Why? Her eyes softened, almost sad. Because I saw what they did to you. I saw a brilliant young woman thrown away like she didn't matter, and I remembered what that felt like. I folded my arms. So you decided to destroy them. She smiled faintly. I decided to make things right. Right? I scoffed. You call threatening a child making things right? Her expression darkened. I would never hurt that little girl, but fear changes people, Rachel. It makes them face their sins. You're insane, I whispered. No, she said calmly. I'm free. You should understand that. You've lived under their shadow your entire life, even after you escaped. I just gave you what you deserved. Justice. I didn't ask for your help. You didn't have to. Her voice softened, almost tender. You were the first person who reminded me of myself. Do you know what my father used to say? That daughters were debts waiting to happen. He sold me to his bookie when I was 17. I spent 5 years married to a monster before I escaped. I said nothing. She looked away. Men like your father, families like yours, they think they can buy forgiveness, rewrite truth. I made it my mission to stop them. I shook my head slowly. You're not avenging me, Pamela. You're using me. My pain gave you permission to relive yours. Maybe, she admitted, but I did what you couldn't. I took a step closer, and now you'll stop. She tilted her head, amused. Or what? You'll destroy me? I pulled out my phone and showed her the files Trevor had sent. The trust documents, her client list, her shell corporations. I could, I said. You think I don't have the power? I learned from the best, people who built empires out of cruelty. For the first time, she looked uncertain. You and I both know you've crossed too many lines, I said quietly. The question is, how many more before you start to sound like them? The silence between us stretched taut. Then, finally, she said, if I stop, they'll win. No, I said, if you stop, you'll heal. For a moment, something flickered behind her eyes. A flash of pain, of understanding, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides fractures. You really are remarkable, she murmured. Stronger than you know. Goodbye, Pamela. I turned and left. The next morning, I woke to an anonymous email. No subject line, no greeting. Just 2 words, files deleted. Then another line, "You win, but they'll never change." I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted it. Some battles weren't meant to be won. They were meant to be ended. The email from Pamela lingered in my mind long after I deleted it. You win, but they'll never change. For days, I replayed that sentence over and over. She was wrong, wasn't she? I wanted to believe my family could change, that maybe fear or exposure or even shame could make them see the truth. But the rational part of me knew better. They weren't built to change. They were built to protect themselves. 3 days later, Dad called. His voice was brittle, like he'd aged 10 years in a week. "Rachel, it's over," he said quietly. "The threats stopped, the emails, the photos, everything's gone." I didn't say anything. "We owe you," he continued. We don't deserve your help, but thank you." "You're right," I said flatly. "You don't deserve it, and I didn't do it for you." There was a pause. I could hear his breath on the line, shaky, uncertain. "Then why?" "Because I don't let people use me anymore, not even to fight my battles for me." He exhaled slowly, like someone trying not to cry. "We want to make things right." I almost laughed. "You can't rewrite the past, Dad. You can only live with it." "We were wrong," he said. "About everything. About you." "Now you realize that," I replied, "when you've lost everything that ever mattered to you." He didn't respond, and for a long time, neither did I. Finally, I said, "Tell Mom I'm glad you're safe. Tell Andrew to keep his daughter away from the darkness you both created. And tell yourself this, the reason you're still breathing is because I stopped her, not because you deserve saving." I hung up. For the first time in years, the silence that followed felt clean. Weeks passed. I threw myself into work. Meetings, mergers, negotiations. The same corporate battlefield that had once terrified me now felt like home. The control, the precision, the clarity of it all, it grounded me. But some nights, when I got home to my empty condo, I'd catch myself glancing at the window, half expecting to see a camera flash from across the street. I'd think about Pamela, about how her need for justice had turned into something toxic, how it mirrored the same obsession my parents had, with control, with image, with legacy. It scared me how easily I could have become like her. One evening, as I was reviewing a client's portfolio, I got another call, from Andrew this time. "Rachel," he said cautiously, "Dad wanted me to reach out. We need advice." "About what?" "The business. We're trying to rebuild. We still have a few assets left. We thought maybe you could help us restructure." I closed my eyes. "You're asking for a consultant now?" He hesitated. "Not for free. We'll pay." I could almost hear the strain in his voice, the humiliation of having to ask the sister they'd once erased. "Andrew," I said softly, "your company's collapse wasn't an accident. It was inevitable, built on arrogance, favoritism, and bad math. You don't need a consultant. You need therapy." He laughed bitterly. "So that's a no." "It's a no," I confirmed. He was quiet for a while. Then, Violet's been asking about you. She's starting to put together family pictures. She saw a photo of you when you were younger. She said you look like her." That made something twist inside me. "She's a good kid, isn't she?" "The best," he said softly. "You'd like her." I wanted to say something, anything, but instead I hung up again. Months rolled into years. I rose higher in my career, built my own fund, hired a team of my own. For every door my family had slammed, I built 2 more on my own terms. And still, I made a point of keeping my distance. Forgiveness was one thing, re-entry was another. Then, one morning, I got an email from a conference organizer, Women in Leadership Summit, keynote invitation. They wanted me to speak about overcoming adversity. I almost declined. The thought of standing on a stage, dissecting my trauma for applause, made my skin crawl. But then I thought of all the young women I'd mentored, the ones who were told they weren't enough, the ones who'd been dismissed, disowned, underestimated. Maybe this wasn't about me anymore. So I said yes. The day of the conference arrived. The auditorium buzzed with energy. Executives, students, dreamers, and fighters all in one place. I stood backstage, adjusting my notes, breathing deeply. "Excuse me," a voice said behind me. I turned. A young woman, maybe 23, stood there, nervous but radiant, her badge trembling slightly in her hand. "Are you the keynote speaker?" she asked. "I am." She smiled shyly. "I just wanted to say you're an inspiration. I've been following your career since college. Everything you've done. It gives me hope." Her eyes were so familiar that it made my chest tighten. What's your name? I asked. Violet, she said. I froze. The name hit like a whisper from another life. Violet? Andrew's daughter? She blinked, surprised. Yes. You know my dad? I laughed softly, the sound breaking into something fragile. You could say that. Her expression shifted as she realized. You're my aunt. I nodded slowly. And you are the niece I've never met. She swallowed hard. I found out about you by accident. Grandma had old photos. No one talks about you. I had to know why. I said nothing, waiting. Why did you leave? She asked quietly. I took a breath. I didn't. I was pushed out. Because you weren't a boy, she whispered. Yes. Her eyes glistened. He still talks that way, you know, about how the family name needs sons to carry it on. I felt an ache deep in my chest. Familiar, generational, relentless. Then don't let that thinking poison you, I said gently. You are not less because you were born a daughter. How do you know? She asked, her voice trembling. How did you stop believing them? I smiled. I didn't. I just started believing myself more. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she whispered, I don't want to be like them. Then don't be, I said. Be the one who breaks the pattern. Tears shimmered in her eyes. I want to study architecture. Dad says it's a waste of money, that I should major in business. I couldn't help but laugh softly. Sounds familiar. Apply to architecture school, Violet. I'll help you. If money's a problem, I'll cover it. She stared at me. You do that? I'd do more than that, I said, because someone once helped me when I needed it most, and that small act of kindness kept me alive. She hugged me suddenly, tight, desperate, trembling. Thank you. I hugged her back. Don't thank me yet. Proving them wrong takes work, but it's worth every ounce of it. The stage manager called my name. It was time. As I walked toward the spotlight, Violet whispered, Go show them who you are. I turned and smiled. That's exactly what I intend to do. The stage lights were blinding. I could feel the heat on my face, hear the murmur of hundreds of people settling into silence. The conference host's voice faded behind me as I stepped up to the microphone. Thank you for having me, I began, scanning the audience. Today, I want to tell you about the day my parents disowned me, and how it became the best thing that ever happened to me. A ripple of stillness swept through the room. I told them everything, about the daughter who was never enough, the nights spent in a flooded basement, the girl who worked 3 jobs just to exist, about the check for $0, about walking away from the people who were supposed to love me. I didn't tell the story for sympathy. I told it for every woman sitting there who'd been told she was too much or not enough. And as I spoke, something shifted. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. I realized the story no longer belonged only to me. It belonged to Violet and to every other woman who'd ever been told her worth was conditional. When I finished, the audience rose in a standing ovation, but I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. Afterward, Violet and I went to dinner at a small restaurant near the harbor. The lights shimmered on the water, and the city hummed softly around us. We talked for hours. She told me about her dreams, architecture school, travel, wanting to design spaces that made people feel safe. She also told me about her father, my brother, and the way he still carried our father's expectations like a curse. Do you ever regret cutting them off? She asked quietly. I thought about it for a long moment. No, I said finally, because staying would have killed me. Not my body, but my spirit. I would have spent my life trying to earn love from people who had already decided I wasn't worth it. She nodded slowly. But don't you ever miss them? I smiled faintly. I miss the idea of them, the parents I wished I had, but those people never existed. Once I accepted that, letting go became easier. She looked down at her hands. What if they change one day? Then that's their journey, I said. But you can't put your life on hold waiting for other people to become who you need them to be. You build your life now, with or without them. Violet wiped her eyes. I want to apply to Columbia, but Dad says it's ridiculous, that I'll fail. Do you want to go? I asked. Her eyes lit up. More than anything. Then apply, I said firmly. I'll write your recommendation. I'll help however I can. She stared at me, shocked. You'd do that? After everything? I nodded. Because 20 years ago, someone gave me a suit and bought me lunch when I had nothing. That kindness kept me going. It mattered. And it's my turn to pass it on. Her voice broke. I'll pay you back someday. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. No, you'll pay it forward. When you make it, you'll find someone who reminds you of yourself, and you'll help her. That's how the cycle breaks. Not through revenge or control, but through generosity. She laughed through her tears. You sound like a therapist. I smiled. Just someone who's lived long enough to know that revenge is a prison. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, is freedom. We sat there until the restaurant closed, talking about her future, about my work, about life. And for the first time in decades, I felt something close to family again. Not the kind bound by blood, but by choice. A few weeks later, Violet texted me. I got in. Columbia accepted me. I stared at the message for a long time, tears filling my eyes. Then I typed back, "You earned it. I'm proud of you." That night, I drove home past all the places that had shaped me. The diner where I'd worked, the parking lot where I'd slept, the college where I'd almost dropped out. Every streetlight felt like a small monument to the girl I used to be. And I realized something. Pamela Torres had wanted to destroy my family for me. She thought justice meant vengeance. But if I'd let her finish, it would have just continued the cycle, pain breeding more pain. Instead, I'd chosen something harder. To build, to heal, to become proof that being thrown away doesn't make you worthless, it makes you unstoppable. 3 years later, I received an invitation to speak again. This time at a global leadership summit in New York. I accepted. When I arrived, I saw her, Pamela, sitting in the back row, older, quieter, but unmistakable. Our eyes met for a brief second. She gave a small nod, acknowledgement, respect, maybe even apology. I nodded back. Then I walked on stage, ready to speak again. Not about vengeance, not about pain, but about freedom. Sometimes, I began, the people who throw you away are doing you a favor. Because once you stop trying to prove your worth to them, you start discovering it for yourself. And that, I smiled, looking out into the crowd, is when your story truly begins. The audience leaned in. I took a deep breath, steady and calm, knowing I'd finally found what I'd spent my whole life searching for. Not justice, not revenge, but peace. After the summit, life began to move in quiet, steady rhythm, the kind that no longer required approval or applause to feel complete. I returned to Boston, to my home with its glass walls and ocean view, and realized something profound. Peace didn't roar, it whispered. For the first time in years, I wasn't running from my past or chasing proof of my worth. I was simply living. Violet sent me photos from New York, her architecture models, her campus life, her smile wide and genuine. Every message was a reminder of what healing looked like when the cycle was finally broken. I kept our thread pinned to the top of my phone, a small anchor to everything I'd fought for. Riley, another young woman I mentored, wrote me one night, "Got the internship. I'm going to make you proud." I smiled, typing back, "You already have. Now go make yourself proud." Because that was the lesson. No one else gets to define you. Not family, not mentors, not ghosts from your past. 6 months later, I came across a headline while scrolling through financial news. Monroe Family Holdings declares bankruptcy, assets acquired by former partner. My parents' legacy was gone. Their company dissolved, their reputation scattered like ashes. I stared at the screen, waiting for the satisfaction that should have come, but it didn't. I just felt still. They'd built an empire on control and favoritism, and it had finally collapsed under its own weight. I didn't need to gloat. The universe had handled justice better than I ever could. Years passed. I made partner at 32, started my own fund at 35, earned my first $10 million by 37. But none of those milestones felt as heavy as that first act of walking away from my family. That was the real wealth, freedom. I invested in scholarships for young women who'd been told they weren't enough, who worked 3 jobs to survive, who needed one person to believe in them. I funded shelters, mentorship programs, community schools. Each name, each story reminded me of the girl I'd once been. The girl in the basement room, the girl who ate bagels for dinner, the girl who believed her worth was negotiable. Now she was gone. In her place stood someone unstoppable. One evening, I got a letter, handwritten, shaky, the return address unfamiliar. Inside was a single page. "Rachel, I saw you on TV. You spoke beautifully. Your mother cried watching you. We're proud of you, even if it's too late to say it in person. Dad." I read it once, then again, feeling an ache I couldn't quite name. Regret, maybe. Not for leaving, but for knowing that even this small gesture came decades too late. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer, between old photographs and memories that no longer hurt. I didn't reply. 10 years after the confrontation, I stood on another stage, older, calmer, wiser. The room was full of women, some my age, some barely out of school, all hungry for something the world had tried to deny them. People always ask me if I ever saw my family again, I said into the microphone. The answer is no, because sometimes closure isn't a reunion, it's a decision to stop letting what broke you define you. I paused, letting the silence stretch. They threw me away, I continued. But that's the thing about people who are discarded. We learn how to build from nothing, and that makes us dangerous, because we stop waiting to be chosen. We start choosing ourselves. The audience erupted, but I barely heard them. My eyes had caught a familiar face near the back. Violet. Grown now. Confident. Beaming. Afterward, she came up to me, tears in her eyes. I graduate next month, she said, and I got a job at an architecture firm in Paris. I hugged her. I told you you'd build something beautiful. You did more than that, she said softly. You showed me how to believe I could. That night, I drove home through the city, the skyline glittering like 1,000 second chances. I passed the diner where I used to work, the campus where I used to cry outside the financial aid office, the street where I'd once parked my car to sleep. Every place still existed, but the pain that once lived there didn't. Because I'd turned all of it, every slight, every rejection, every humiliation, into fuel. They had meant to break me. Instead, they'd freed me. The girl in the flooded basement was gone. The woman standing here now, this woman, was untouchable. I parked in my driveway, stepped out beneath the stars, and looked at the home I'd built brick by brick, choice by choice, and I smiled. Because the best revenge was never destruction. It was success, peace, and the audacity to live joyfully after everything. They had thrown me away, and I had become the woman they could never touch.